Martin Scorsese's gangster movie The Irishman will tell the story of Frank Sheeran, a World War II veteran who became associates with the likes of mobsters like Russell Bufalino and Angelo Bruno. He eventually befriended Teamsters Union leader Jimmy Hoffa and spent decades working under him. There is a huge number of interesting characters in the movie, and some may ask, why is the film focusing on Sheeran of all people? To me, it's a redundant complaint because even if Sheeran's life was dull, which it isn't, having a protagonist who is a passenger in his own movie isn't always a bad thing. The movie will be an account of the life of Sheeran, from his troubled family life to his role as a hitman for the Italian mafia. Like Goodfellas and Casino, the film is set to be dramatic, fun, suspenseful and engaging, only with the added element of the reflection and contemplation of Sheeran in his old age looking back on his prime. These mature themes of guilt, friendship versus loyalty and redemption from a sorrowful and regretful burnt-out old man looking back on his criminal past perfectly juxtaposes the killing and thieving of his prime, when people like Sheeran ruled the streets and could do whatever he wants. Just like with Henry Hill in Goodfellas, Sheeran met many interesting characters in his life, and like with Hill, you could make the argument that he's the least interesting main character in the film. But there's actually good reason for this, because it's important to have the main character be as relatable as possible to the audience so we don't feel disconnected and turned off by what we see. Having Goodfellas told from the viewpoint of Tommy DeVito, for example, a man who would openly shoot at innocent women in the street just to test out his new gun, would be a decision that could disgust audiences and derail the film. It's an experiment Scorsese did try with The Wolf of Wall Street by essentially telling the story from the bad guy's point of view, a movie which had mixed results, with many people accusing the film of glorifying Jordan Belfort's actions. You could make the argument that characters like Jimmy Hoffa and Russell Bufalino, the two main secondary characters, lived far more interesting lives than Frank Sheeran, and the movie should instead focus on them. That might be true, but the genius of telling the story through the view of Sheeran is that his eyes are our window to this world of crime and corruption. Whereas the likes of Bufalino were born into a life of crime, Sheeran had no idea what the mafia was until he saw the famous Apellechin bust on the news. This means that we as the audience essentially are on the same start point as Sheeran. We're on the same page as him, and as he grows and develops himself into the world of the mafia, learning the ropes, we are too. There are times where Frank Sheeran is a bystander in his own story, instead Hoffa's court cases and his withering friendship with Bufalino taking center stage, with Sheeran running back and forward between the two trying to make peace. This gives us an excellent objective viewpoint of events, as opposed to, say, if the movie was told from Hoffa or Bufalino's point of view, where essentially the other would be an antagonist. Another reason for telling the brilliant story of the Teamsters, JFK's assassination and the Mafia is that Sheeran is connected with all of these events. He is the line that connects all the dots that are the interesting storylines and characters. For example, Sheeran is present in some way or another in Hoffa's trials, in Crazy Joe Gallo's murder, in World War II, in the Detroit Union strikes, etc., etc. To focus on another character would sacrifice key storylines, or meaning Scorsese and co would have to invent storylines, deviating from the truth. It's also almost as if the life of Frank Sheeran and the book I Heard You Paint Houses was made for Scorsese. You'd be hard-pressed to find material more suited to being adapted by the filmmaker, with all his dominant themes like machoism, Catholic guilt, redemption and pride all rampant in Sheeran's life. The segment of his life which is probably going to be the most interesting is his later years, where unlike his prime he is weak and alone, and he seeks atonement for his sins by confessing them, which is actually what led to the creation of the book I Heard You Paint Houses. Scorsese has never gone that far ahead in any of his criminal protagonists' lives. For example, the credits started rolling when Henry Hill was still longing for the mafia life, and ignorant of the fact that he should have been happy to be alive at the very least. The likes of Travis Bickle and Jake LaMotta never lived to their elderly years in the films. With Sheeran's elderly years, Scorsese will tap into what for him will be a goldmine, given his trademark themes are superbly suited to showcasing Sheeran's seeking of redemption and his regret. The Irishman will cover a lot of ground already ploughed by Scorsese, but as I put it in another video, there is very good reason for this film to exist, not least because the aspect of older, tired gangsters looking back on their lives full of sad reflection and contemplation is something that he has not yet done. The filmmaker also has gone on record saying that this movie will be a lot different from the likes of Goodfellas and Casino, with the elderly gangsters past their primes looking back being a major factor, something without Sheeran's story the film wouldn't have. So whilst it's true there may be more interesting characters in the film than Sheeran, and the filmmakers could have made it differently, such as having it be a biopic of Hoffa or Buffalino, without Frank's story bringing together all these brilliant stories and characters, garnished with the older mafioso angle, the film wouldn't be the masterpiece it will surely become. Thanks for watching.